When I talk about the first things you should do at level 90 in Mists of Pandaria, the vast majority of this will remain true going forward many months into the future, but the primary focus of this is for Phase 1. Over time, things like reputation catch-ups, new bonus roll currencies, zones where you can get really fast gear, all of those types of things get introduced where it would change your optimal gearing path before you go into raids, so I'll do an updated version of this for each phase. Even just going forward 1 week after Mogoshon Vaults opens, there's going to be certain things you'll be able to do to get gear that you're not actually going to be able to do before the raids open. So let's state the facts. Mists of Pandaria Classic launches on the 21st of July, and Mogoshon Vaults is most likely going to open on the 31st of July. This would be in line with all raid launches up until this point throughout Classic so far. Around 2 weeks after Mogoshon Vaults opens, we should get access to the new Celestial Dungeons. While we don't know the nitty-gritty around the Celestial Dungeons yet, what we do know is they're going to provide us with LFR gear, both from the bosses inside the dungeons and from a form of currency. So working with that, we're assuming we'll have around 10 days from launch to get to level 90 and tick off various tasks to be what you would consider to be raid ready. If you go super tryhard mode and blast out 85 to 90 in the first 24 hours of launch, then you'll have plenty of time to do all of this. If you like to take your time and enjoy the journey, level your professions on the way up and generally just play a little bit more chilled out, don't worry, you'll still get the vast majority of all of this done because Blizzard have actually slowed down many things. I am specifically talking about reputations here, which we will get into very soon. So with all that being said, the primary aim of this video is from the 21st of July to the 31st of July, where you're going to have those 10 days, is what should you focus on in those 10 days. You've just dinged level 90, you know maybe you've got 7 days left now until the raids open. What do I need to do? Well, I've got 11 things on this list specifically, which I want to quick fire. This isn't going to be a long dragged out video, but I do need to drag it out just to 30 seconds so I can mention Rested XP. If you haven't used Rested XP before, then you might not know, but it is the fastest way to level. And in Mists of Pandaria, with reputation being so important, questing is actually going to be extremely valuable. So if you want to pick up a guide, you can pre-order it now. You'll get a quest stacking guide that you can do during the pre-patch to get a little bit of a head start where Mists of Pandaria launches, and you'll also get a daily reputation guide at level 90 thrown in as well. It is an affiliate link, so any guides bought go towards supporting the channel, so thanks in advance for that. But if you don't want the Rested XP guide and you want to show extra support, you could always join the channel as a member. Just thought I'd throw that in. Now, I want to do these in order of importance, but I do want to get reputations out of the way first. So my first point is to focus on your reputations immediately as soon as you ding level 90. Now, if you haven't seen my video where I spoke about things that you should do on your journey from 85 to 90, all 3 of these reputations will already be underway. I'll put a link to that in the description below. But you should already have done the introductory quest for the tillers and got your farm started. From 89 to 90, you should have already quested in the Dreadwaste, so your Claxi rep is already going to be started. And at 87 plus, when you was in Kunlai Summit, you should have unlocked the gates to Val and started the introductory quest to get you to Shrine. If you've already done that on your way to level 90, then as soon as you've dinged, all you've got to go and do is deal with your farm over at the tillers, go to the Claxi and do one of the daily quest hubs, whichever quest hub it is at the time, and then go to the Pagoda to start the quest chain for Golden Lotus, which literally takes about 20 minutes. But quite honestly, the tillers is actually the most important one there, because to get exalted with the Claxi, there's a repeatable handing quest that you can do by farming Dread Amber shards. Now, that quest is actually going to be disabled until after the first reset of raids. So before the very first raid opens, unless someone finds a really cheesy way of doing it, getting exalted with a Claxi to be able to get your pre-raid Bis item should be absolutely impossible. The same goes with the Golden Lotus. Yes, you're going to want to get exalted with both of these reputations eventually, but it's not going to be until around the week after the raids open that you're actually going to be able to get the 489 ring and 489 neck. Now, I will put it out there that in my opinion at least, the ring is far more important than the neck, because for most classes you'll only have one option of ring that comes from Mogoshon Vaults, so being able to use this as your second ring is obviously going to be really good. Whereas you can get a neck of higher eye level from Heroic MSV anyway, so this neck would either just tide you over, or if you're someone that knows you're probably not going to raid Heroic anyway, in which case this is probably going to be one of the best that you're going to be able to get. Now, another thing worth noting, which we will get to in a later point, but you can also get a neck and a ring from Valor Points, and on the basis the necks and the rings from Valor Points are pretty cheap, it does kind of diminish the need to do these on the basis that they're not opening until after the raids anyway, because you're going to have done 3 Valor caps by the time the Claxi repeatable handing becomes available, so by then you'd probably just pick up the Valor ring or neck anyway. But the tillers is incredibly important. You don't want to miss a day of harvesting your crops, because every crop that you do harvest at level 90 gives you reputation, and you're definitely going to want to get to revered with the tillers as quickly as possible so you can start planting moats of harmony. The reason I wanted to get this out of the way first is because depending on what sort of person you are, depends on how important you're going to rank this in the first things you should do at level 90. For me personally, getting all three of these rolling on the way to 90, so all I've got to do is 15-20 minutes worth of dailies a day, and I'm covering all three of these anyway, is going to be worthwhile. Now, the second one is getting your legendary questline started, and I'm sure you've heard of this before, and really, this should be the first thing you grab, because the first part of the quest is you're going to need to get reputation with the Black Prince. It's worth noting that if you're a rogue that's got the legendary daggers from Cataclysm, you won't need to get the reputation with him for the first part, because he's going to say basically, oh, we already know each other, don't we? We're mates. So you'll be straight onto the actual raid portion, which obviously you're not going to be able to progress any further. Now, on the most part, you're not really in a massive rush to worry about this, because you're not going to be able to get any of the sigils of power or sigils of wisdom that you need until the following week anyway. But if you grab this straight away, at least when you are doing your dailies around Dreadwaste or in Vale of Eternal Blossoms, you're going to be getting rep with a Black Prince for everything you kill, because without having the quest in your quest log, you're not going to be able to get any rep. Ultimately though, you're just picking this up purely for the reputation part, because you're not going to be able to get any further until you can get inside the raid. Now, next up, what everyone should be doing is getting the eye level to be able to queue for heroics. Of course, if you've got a group of 5 of you, you don't need the eye level, because you can just walk into the dungeon, and quite honestly, if you're in full Cataclysm heroic gear from Dragon Soul, you'll be fine just walking straight into heroics with a group of 5 of you. But ideally you want to get the eye level of 435 so you can use the random dungeon finder. This is of course so you can get Valor at the same time, but we will get to that soon. Now, depending on how long it takes you to actually get to level 90, will depend on how easy a time you're going to have of this. Because if it's quite a few days after launch, then there'll be many people that have already done their professions, and they'll be selling 450 crafted PvP pieces on the auction house. So just picking up some of the PvP gear off the auction house, or getting someone in the guild to craft it, or even crafting it yourself, is going to be great just to replace some of those items that you didn't manage to upgrade while you was questing. There's also a level 90 scenario that you can queue for specifically called Arena of Annihilation. Now, this is basically the equivalent of Crucible of Carnage or the Amphitheatre in Zoldrak, or even Nagrand Arena, where you're going to get a 450 eye level weapon for completing this. Before you queue into it though, you're going to want to head over to Temple of the White Tiger, which is where you went and done the quest to be able to open the gates down into Val. Just outside the temple down the steps, you're going to see this guy called Gurkthok, and he's going to give you the quest to enter and complete the Arena of Annihilation, which, as you can see, rewards you with a 450 eye level weapon. Outside of this, you should have got a decent amount of blue items from the end of quest chains from the quest in Dreadwastes, because again, you should have really been working on your Claxi rep on the way to 90 anyway. At this point, you can be spending any of your Justice or Honor points that you carried over from Cataclysm, because ideally you should be going into Mr. Pandaria capped at 4k of both, and you can just use these to fill in any slots that are just going to help you get into random dungeon finder quicker. Now again, depending on how long it took you to level, you may even be able to just go straight to the auction house and buy your crafted chest and crafted gloves, or maybe even some world drop epics if you've got loads of gold. So really, how easy it is to get this eye level is completely going to depend on how you physically leveled, how much gold you've got, and how long it's actually took you to get to 90, and if the auction house has started to get flooded with crafted PvP gear. Now, for all of the rest of these points, quite honestly, you could say they're all leading towards one thing, and that's getting pre-raid bis. So now you can actually get in heroics. Of course, you want to just spam heroics. One of the big important things is you want to make sure that you're specific queuing every day to the heroic that drops your epic item from the last boss. So for example, if you're a monk and you want fist weapons, you should always be queuing for Shadowpan Monastery every day, because at least you're guaranteed it once, and then when you do randoms, you might get it again. But ultimately, you're going to spam lots and lots of heroics and just try and get as many 463 pieces as you can, preferably focusing on those slots that you know you're not going to replace with crafted gear, or potentially even Valor gear. Still around pre-raid bis, it's time to get your epics from professions. So for example, if you're engineering, make sure you're leveling your engineering up and get your goggles made. If you're a leather worker, a tailor or a blacksmith, start grinding the mats to make your gloves and chests. And remember, these are bind on equip. So even if you aren't a leather worker, tailor or blacksmith, everyone's going to want to get them anyway. So if you're wanting to get as geared as possible, as quick as possible before the raids open, if you're, for example, a hunter, you want to be buddying up with a leather worker to help him get what he needs to actually craft you your chest and gloves. The next point is obviously an absolutely humongous one because it's the Darkmoon Fair trinkets. No matter what class you are, you're most likely going to want one. The thing is, how you get it is going to vary from person to person. If you've got a Gatherer, make sure you buy a Tome of Flying and start doing some herbing on it at the very least. So you don't need to level the character, but if you've got a herber and you've got to level 90 now and you've done all your heroics and you've got all the bits that you need that you can get from the heroics, buy the Tome so your ult can fly to start doing loads of herbing to get all your inscription cooldowns rolling. Now again, if you watched what you should do between 85 and 90, that video, you'll know you should have really already started that anyway, because you don't need to get a single point in inscription to learn Scroll of Wisdom, so you can start using the daily cooldowns instantly. You won't be able to instantly start making cards, but the bottleneck of being able to make cards is the daily cooldown being the Scroll of Wisdom that doesn't need you to skill up inscription at all. So you want to be using those daily cooldowns as soon as physically possible. If, however, you don't have an army of scribes, then you need to start trying to make some gold to buy individual cards. Make your own cards on your maybe one and only scribe that's your main. Trade cards with others as well, so if you can pick up cheap cards and then trade them for more expensive cards. Whatever you need to do, just do it so you can get that deck. If you're extremely lazy but absolutely loaded with gold, then you're probably just going to go to the auction house and buy one of the first decks that pops up, but it should always work out cheaper by working on getting the individual cards, especially if you can get a couple of cards yourself because you have got a few scribes at least. The reason I wanted to include this as a point purely on its own and not falling under getting your profession gloves and profession chest and NG goggles and stuff like that is because of the sheer time investment or gold investment that it needs to be able to get this trinket. For the next point, I do want to put a side note in here, just purely because if you're watching the video past launch, then it's highly likely that Celestial dungeons are available where you can just get full LFR gear. So if that's the case, of course, you're just going to spam them Celestial dungeons and buy everything you can to get pre-raid bis, and then really all you need to get is the Darkmoon Fair trinket. Going back to inscription though, if you do have a lot of scribes, remember it's worth keeping hold of Scrolls of Wisdom on one of them at least, to be able to make the bind on account staff, because it's only going to be a couple of weeks after the raid opens that you're actually going to have enough Scrolls of Wisdom on that character to make a staff. So if you're then going to start leveling an ult, at least you got a 476 weapon to start with instantly. I do want to put it out there though, when I'm saying about using daily cooldowns for scribes, obviously this is important for every other profession as well. So if you've followed all of this so far and you've got pretty much everything you want from heroics, you've got your Darkmoon Fair trinket, you've got your crafted epics, then kind of making sure that your ults professions are now leveled up as well is only going to benefit you in the long run. So if you've got alchemists, make sure you're starting to level those now so you can start getting living stills, because when you get in the raid and you start replacing belts left, right, centre, you'll be able to use your own living stills to make your belt buckles, all that sort of thing. Slightly less important, but just worth a mention anyway. Now, if you have been doing your dailies every day with Claxi and Golden Lotus, the odds are pretty high that you're going to have a decent amount of lesser charms. But of course, you're going to want to be walking in the raid the first time with 3 bonus rolls. So you're going to want to make sure that you've got your 90 lesser charms, or if it gets changed and they go down to 50, then you'll only need 50. But either way, whatever the quest is, whether it's 90 or it's 50, you're going to need that amount. Looking at it at the moment, it looks like it's probably going to stay at 90, which is a bit of a slog, but if you've been doing your dailies every day, the odds are you're going to have 90 by the time the raid's open anyway. Now, I feel like it's worth mentioning, although it will be very tight for NA to do it, but on EU, when it launches on the Monday night, you've got until Wednesday at reset to be able to get to level 90 and hand in 90 lesser charms to get 3 bonus rolls. Now, I don't know how Blizzard are going to handle the bonus roll quest, but I do want to mention it just in case it's something that ends up worthwhile doing. But if you get to 90 incredibly fast, as in before the first reset, because it launches on Monday, so if we was to use EU as an example, because it's probably more realistic, on the Wednesday you're going to have reset. If you can actually get to 90 before the Wednesday, get 90 charms and hand them in, you're going to have 3 bonus rolls straight away. Then you'll be able to get another 3 with that reset on the Wednesday, and then obviously we're going to get 1 more reset before we actually go into the raid. So you could potentially go in with 9 bonus rolls. Now, I've got to be honest, we might not get a reset at all on the Tuesday or Wednesday. It's probably highly likely we won't, but it's worth bearing in mind. Again, I don't know if it's going to work. I'm putting it out there, but if you do happen to get to 90, get in those 90 lesser charms as quickly as possible and handing them in, just in case they do reset. Worth it. Now, as you all know, my go-to way of getting lesser charms is doing pet battles, and on the basis up until this point where I've got all my heroic dungeon gear, I've done my professions, I'm doing my reputations, I wouldn't have had much time to do many pet battles, so getting my bonus rolls or at least finishing off any lesser charms I need I would do by going and beating the pet trainers to get to the end of the quest chain to get the 3,000 gold, and then just grab any missing lesser charms I need just from pet battling in the open world. Obviously, you get yours however you want, but that's what I'll be doing personally. Now, there's 2 more points to get through, and the first is Valor Cap. Now, you're going to be able to Valor Cap twice, at least. The reason I say at least is because kind of the same as the lesser charms hand in. I'll be completely honest, I can't really remember how that first reset of Valor worked with Cataclysm, but either way, I'm working on the fact that I'm going to get 2 full resets of Valor, and if it's going to stay how it is, that's going to be 1,600 a week with a rolling cap. So by the time we go into the raids, we should have about 3.2k Valor to spend on any last minute upgrades. Things that we didn't happen to get. Again, you could just get the ring and the neck because you're not going to have the Claxian Golden Lotus ring and neck, or you could get a pair of shoulders if you've been unlucky and not got a pair of shoulders. Basically, you can get any slot that you want, but making sure you get your Valor Cap twice before the raid launches is going to, of course, be very important because it's a huge eye level jump from 463 from heroic dungeon gear to 489 from Valor gear. That's a big eye level increase. So you're definitely going to want to make sure that you get Valor capped at least twice before the raids. And then along the same lines, even if you're not into PvP, getting the Conquest cap. This is something I've not spoke about up until now, purely because I forgot. I don't know if you remember, but back in Cataclysm, everyone was scurrying around a couple of days before the raid when the arena season started to be able to get their 2 set PvP pieces. So that was like gloves and shoulders, for example, because you got quite a big primary stat bonus from using 2 pieces, as in for the set bonus. Now, on the basis that this PvP gear is 483, even if you was just to pick up a pair of bracers or a belt or anything, a cloak. Now, how the cap is going to look, I don't know. Originally, it was 1650 in Mr. Pandaria, but they also did change it in Cataclysm, where they put it as 4k, and it's a 4k rolling cap. So if we've got a 4k Conquest cap in Mr. Pandaria, which seems a bit too much to me, to be honest with you, especially for the opening weeks, you'd be able to get a couple of strong items, and then on top of that, a couple of strong Valor items as well. We're going to be going into MSV with pretty insane gear if you follow all these points. I said this video weren't going to be long, and I feel like I've rambled on for ages, so I do apologise for that, but that would be the exact things that I would do as soon as I ding level 90. I wouldn't deviate from it. There's nothing else that I would go and do. I would literally make sure, in order, I go pick up the legendary quest line, start the reputations, get the eye level for heroics, spam heroics, do professions, get pre-raid bis, get my lesser charms so I can get my bonus rolls, make sure I'm Valor capping, make sure I'm Conquest capping, spend all of that Valor and Conquest before the raids open. So that's where I'm going to leave it. If any of this helped you, or you enjoyed the video, or you just like listening to me rambling on, then be sure to like and subscribe. Consider joining the channel as a member to show extra support, and I'll see you on the next one.